Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. As-salatu was-salam ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi awlillah. Wa amma ba'd rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إن الحسين مصباح الهدى والسفينة النجاة. I begin with expressing my condolences for the arrival of the saddest days and nights of Muslims, and I hope we can learn and we can enjoy from the depth of the knowledge and the depth of the teachings of these days and these nights. During this night, as we spoke last night, the aim is to discuss the ways in which we can relate ourselves to the great uprising and revolution of Imam Hussein. How possibly we can relate ourselves? What are the responsibilities of ourselves in regard to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and in regard to his revolution? How possibly can we respond to this great event? These are the questions that needed to be dealt, and I hope we get the chance to speak, at least to clarify and to discuss part of these responses that are available among our communities. Last night we discussed that there are two popular ways in which we can relate ourselves to Imam Hussein's uprising. One of the very accustomed and very popular ways of relating ourselves to Imam Hussein is a pure and mere emotional way of connection. Among Muslims and Shias, during the past almost 1300 years or more of mourning, there is a connection, a popular way of connecting ourselves to Imam Hussein, or responding to the depth of his sacrifice, to the depth of the mournings and sadness that we have, through emotional responses, through expressing and performing the depth of our sadness, to show other people how badly we are damaged emotionally because of this event, to express our own and personal relation to Imam Hussein through a mere channel of emotion, crying, beating our chest, and performing other sort of emotional responses to this great events. This type of understanding, or this type of relating ourselves to Imam Hussein's revolution, has certain consequences, and it is based on a certain type of philosophy and understanding of Imam Hussein's revolution. So I would like to speak tonight about the philosophy and the consequences of this type of response. And inshallah, next time when we get together, I will start speaking about the intellectual response to the Imam Hussein's revolution. But it is very important to clarify and to sort of discuss the ways in which we historically and among the mass gathering of people, how emotional attachment, how emotional relationship with Imam Hussein is affected our religious and our social and political lives. So in order to argue that Imam Hussein's revolution brings only personal an emotional response. We need to create a philosophy to explain that what Imam Hussein has done has nothing to do directly to us. What he has done, the decision he made, the sacrifice he made, the fight that he has done, the bravery that he presented, all of this in terms of socio-political, environmental situations has nothing to do with us. It is only him and his action that he has done, and we are not asked to participate in anyhow or any sense to bring his action, to bring his decision, to bring the ways in which he dealt with the problems that he was facing to. That was all his, and we need to leave it there and even do not even think to participate in anyhow or any sense to the amount of engagement that he had done. What we need to do in this philosophy is to just leave Imam Hussein and his motto of action, what he thought was the essence of his revolution, because he was a man that his action, his thoughts, his engagement with political and social issues belongs only to him. Because he was Masoom. He was infallible person. An infallible person can only be followed with another person in his level of engagement. A person like us, that we are fallible, we can make mistakes, we can commit errors and so many other human things that we cannot prevent ourselves not to make those mistakes. There is no way for us to bring him as a logo of action, as someone that show us and we can follow him. We can learn from his action. Because he was infallible, we need to only look at his action and emotionally respond to him. This was the philosophy behind the mere response, the only emotional response of emotion to his revolution. If I could take Imam Hussein as an example, as a logo, and try to imitate his action, try to copy what he has done, try to follow his footstep, try to follow him, what he had said and what he had done, the issue would be completely different. I hope you are following me, what I'm trying to analyze in the reasoning of this issue. So if I could follow someone as a follower, I would try to understand what he exactly said or what he exactly has done, and then try to do the same way or say the same way. In the link of Shia's history, we probably have known not too many actions or statements that people have done in the following path of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The majority of people think that what Imam Hussein has done belongs to himself. What it belongs to us, or the type of response that we ought to do that, is to be emotionally sort of responsive to his action. So there's a relationship between action and emotion. He commit a sense of action, and we respond with emotion. This is the philosophy, I think, behind uh, most of people's, engagement with Imam Hussein's revolution. That we cannot follow him, we cannot do what he has done, but the only thing we can do is to be emotionally responsive. The consequences of this kind of philosophy that separate emotion from action and separate Imam or infallible from the fallible, from Imam from people in terms of their actions, and connect them through emotion, is that I need a return for the favor of emotion. I need a return for the favor that I give Imam Hussein for my emotion or for my emotional response. If I mourn, if I cry, if I do emotional responses for the 10 days of each year of Muharram, I need something from him to give me in return. And we have, a good number of hadiths that says if you emotionally engage with Imam Hussein, if you're mourning, if you're crying, every drop of your cry or every drop of your crying would give you an access to paradise. So if you think about this kind of philosophy in terms of the consequences of emotional engagement with Imam Hussein's revolution, then it gives you a very descriptive and clear explanation why so many people are engaging only emotionally to the Imam Hussein's uprising. Because if crying gives me paradise, why would I bother to action? Why would I bother myself with action? Why do I have to go through the suffering of purification? Why would I bother myself to follow the footsteps of Imam Hussein in my political and social and economical lives? If I can easily get this access with crying, I am not absolutely denying the necessity of being sad, of being emotionally engaged with Imam Hussein's revolution. I am responding only to the philosophy that it tells us we can respond only to the Imam Hussein's revolution through our emotional and the performance of our emotional attachment to Imam Hussein. Only crying and mourning and being sad is our responsibility to Imam Hussein's revolution, to Imam Hussein's suffering and sacrifice. So the consequences of understanding Imam Hussein, Imam Hussein's engagement with Yazid and Imam Hussein's revolution and his sacrifice, and our responsibility to this sacrifice is to be only emotionally engaged. The consequences is that the engagement, the emotional engagement brings to us something that only action can bring to us. If you look at our Holy Quran's description of how a believer can go to paradise, we can easily understand how far we're left behind. So if you go back to the topics that we are discussing tonight, we would say that the first and the major response to Imam Hussein's revolution is a pure and mere emotional response. a response that has no action included, a response that has only emotional and personal and in a sense private engagement of a person with Imam Hussein's sacrifice. The philosophy behind this approach is that the action of an infallible Imam has nothing to do with our action. We cannot follow him because he is infallible. He has a very special connection to God that we don't have that sort of connection. He knows things that we don't know. Therefore, his action doesn't bring any necessity for us to follow him or to follow his footsteps. If we cannot follow him in action, then the only thing and the only path that we can follow him is through our emotional responses. And therefore, that's all we have done to the great revolution of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We responded mainly, and historically, the mass only responded through their emotion, with performing their sadness in many different ways, with poetries, with play, with action. But all major responses has one category, and that category is emotional response. The philosophy was clear, and the consequences that in return Imam Hussein will help us to get access to paradise. And the result or the consequences of this kind of analysis is that in many different ways, in many different views, we don't need to actually worry about what we are doing. We do what we do in our normal days and in our normal lives. If we can get ourselves to a Husseiniyah or a mosque for the whole 10 day of Ashoura, and we can express our sadness and we can perform the deep of our condolences, then we're good. We're good for the rest of the year. And that is actually happening through many societies and through histories, that we don't care about what Imam Hussein has said and what Imam Hussein has done. What we do care actually is to emotionally respond, mourning and expressing our sadness, not for Imam Hussein, to purify our own life through the philosophy that if we cry for Imam Hussein, we will go to Bihisht, we will go to Jannah, and the Jannah is guaranteed for the one who mourned for Imam Hussein. If that is the philosophy, then why, as I mentioned, why bother to purify our life? Why try to be a good Muslims? We know a lot of people, they don't do their religious duties. They don't themselves committed. They don't bring themselves committed to the religious orders. What they do is that they live outside of religious laws and rules and regulations. And they come back to Islam, they come back to religion, they come back to Shia only for 10 days. And in those 10 days, the only thing they do, they perform the perform, and they show and they express how deeply saddened they are. As far as I can say, this is a absolutely harmful conceiving of the philosophy of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein stood up. He took the hardest way to respond to the totalitarian regime and an un-Islamic regime of Yazid, to give us an example, a way of dealing with problems and and issues in our political and social lives, a way to deal with our own issues and problems and act upon those issues. Emotional responses, emotional activities are part of the engagement that we have with bigger issues and problems. But that is not the whole, that is not the totality of the action that we're committing. I will get back to this issue in my next speech, and I will try my best to explain how devastating this conception, how devastating this issue of bringing or reducing Imam Hussein's revolution to the mere and the only emotional response. The reduction of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's action to emotion is devastating. And we are devastated through the whole history of Shia through this mere emotional response. The right the right engagement and response to Imam Hussein's revolution is a engagement that bring us in a total engagement in terms of action and emotion and thinking. And we would need that, and we would need to get back to that point. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.